Hello and welcome everybody. I'm Leah from Connected AU and we are so excited to be joined by the incredibly talented Australian author Pip Fioretti to talk about her latest book, Skull River, which I have a copy of right here. Pip has had a fascinating creative journey. She began her professional life in visual arts, working both as an artist and teacher before turning her attention to fiction writing in 2008. Since then, she published three novels in women's fiction before shifting into historical crime fiction. Her first crime novel, Bonelands, introduced us to the gritty and compelling world of Detective Gus Hawkins, and her latest book, Skull River, continues his story in a way that is completely gripping. Set in 1912, which was a fascinating period, Skull River weaves mystery with social commentary, tackling themes like class, religion, gender, and environmental exploitation. Pip's writing combines historical accuracy and, excuse me, and suspense, and with a lot of psychological insight as well. We're absolutely thrilled to have you here with us today, Pip, and we look forward to hearing a little bit about your writing process, your inspiration, and what is next for you. If anybody has a question for Pip or a comment, please just type your name into the chat and we'll keep an eye on the chat as we go. So, Pip, thank you for joining us and congratulations on a fantastic book.
Thank
Um,
you.
I just mentioned to you, I started Skull River without having read Bonelands, but I was
Yeah,
thrilled that it stands so strong, on its own. And
yeah,
you don't need to read Bonelands to love and understand both Gus Hawkins and the whole story.
yeah.
So I think Gus Hawkins, immediately drew me in, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about, the first spark of inspiration for Gus Hawkins and in turn Bonelands and Skull River.
Okay. Um, well, I did write contemporary women's fiction, three novels, and then I decided I wanted to write historical women's fiction. And Gus bobbed up as a bit player in a manuscript set in 1913, and I gave him a backstory that just a couple of sentences, and I just, oh, gee, that's interesting. And I continued on with the story. And then he just sort of lodged in my mind. And when we went into the COVID lockdowns, I decided I wanted to have a go at writing crime. And I could just hear this little voice, coming from my hard drive, remember me. And
Wow. Yeah.
so I just thought, yeah, I'm going to take that character out of that manuscript and I'm going to look at his backstory and develop him.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's what I did.
That's what you
Yep.
did. Wow. So that
Yeah.
idea was brewing for quite a while before it came to life.
Yeah, a couple of years, couple
Couple
of
of years.
years. And then
Yeah.
I started seriously writing it in 2021 or 2, I think.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Amazing. And I wanted to say, he's a very complex character. He's gone through a lot. How
Mm.
did you sort of develop his persona? And when you're writing him, what aspects of his character did you find, the most interesting to write?
What I found most interesting about him, and this is what I set out to explore, was it sounds like it was a huge, ambitious theme, but I
Mm,
really wanted to look at Australian masculinity
yeah.
as it is today, but where did it come from?
Okay.
And I was looking at imperial masculinity, the imperial warrior
Yep.
who was forged by the British Empire, and how much was expected of those men. Okay, they were at the top of the pile,
Mm,
but they were expected to be really emotionally controlled
yep.
and to tamp down their feelings and to behave in certain masculine ways. It was a
Yes.
tremendous straitjacket,
Mm,
and I can see echoes of that still in contemporary men.
society.
Yep.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
sort of wanted to have a look at where that went. And I wanted this man to be dealing with the trauma that he had uh, accumulated through going to war without the sort of wellness speak that we have today. He
Right.
was traumatized in a time when it just wasn't right for a man to express any sort of weakness. So
Yes.
how did he make sense of it?
Yeah.
He that's what interested me, and I set him against a fairly traumatized landscape, which
Mm.
had been ravaged by colonial grazing practices, most from the 19th century, by
Yep.
drought. So here were two products of the sort of colonial project really quite damaged, and
Yes.
then I just sort of
Yep.
got it going.
Yeah.
And you know, I have not written. Oh, I have written male voices before, but he took the starring role, and developing a male voice as a female takes a bit of work.
Mm, how
Because
did you get inside his head? I'd love to know. Yeah. What did you do to get inside his head? Because you did that beautifully. But how did you
um,
do
I watched a lot of man films, read a lot of man novels. Just sort of. I listened to a fantastic podcast called "The Art of Manliness,"
that? Okay.
which is an American podcast, which talked a lot about your classic American male, masculine preoccupations like competitiveness, how to build your own fire, all the things
Mm,
that
the
guys like.
stereotypical, yes,
Yeah, yeah,
male
yeah. And
stuff.
it's just
Yeah.
sort of um, a lot of thinking, and just sort of just be, forcing myself to be aware of the
Mm,
differences in the way we men and women see a particular
yeah.
situation. Yeah,
Um, and I thought the night terrors were particularly clever, actually. That was a really great way to sort of highlight what you just mentioned, where, it was
yeah,
frowned upon to show weakness, and he had no control over that, obviously. So I
yeah,
loved that sort of clever way of, he did view it as a weakness, and it was beyond his control, not something that he
yeah,
switch off. Yeah, so I love that.
yeah.
Um, also, so we just heard how you got into his head. It was a pretty dark headspace for him, I guess. Like he went through a lot of trauma, as you said. So after writing intense scenes or some of the darker scenes, how did you snap yourself out of it? What did you do afterwards to kind
Oh,
of
I didn't.
maintain
I didn't.
emotional balance, or you didn't need to?
I didn't really need to. I mean, I have a pretty fairly realistic view of the world and
Mm-hmm.
of human nature. And if you are at all interested in history, you will see that humans are capable of terrible things.
Yeah.
And it didn't upset me too much. I was more concerned with the mechanics of how to make it work.
Mm,
There were a couple of things where I had to really dig deep into my unconscious that surprised me, because the main character is quite often a reflection of your own persona. And
right.
there's a couple of sentences in Bonelands that I just wrote, and then I went, "Oh wow, that's dark. Where did that come from?" And then I thought, "Oh well, it's Gus, isn't it?
Mm,
That's what he would
him.
do."
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, actually the murder in Bonelands is based on a real murder called the Gatton murders in Queensland in 1898, which was never solved. The murder of two sisters and a brother.
Mm,
And I read an account of those murders, and I honestly found that true crime to be more disturbing than actually writing the fiction.
yeah. Yeah. Because you knew
So,
it
yeah.
actually happened. Yeah. So in
Well,
Skull
yeah,
River,
yeah,
yeah.
because
Yeah. Sorry, I was going to say, are there any elements of Skull River that were based on sort of real events or real figures? Were there any sort of
uh,
pop killings or
no, the murder is was I can't say too much because I don't want to give it away, but it was a fairly common reason for killing.
right?
Um, it was a very difficult. It was a highly gendered society, Edwardian society. If you had this masculinity that was so uptight and controlling
Mm,
and so about being masterful. You had the femininity that was almost, you know, either you were a working class drudge or you were just an ornament. So it was
Yeah.
very highly gendered.
Yes.
Um, I know the town quite well because I used to go up there for camping holidays and the like, and that really that played a lot into it,
Yeah.
I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of research, like specific research you had to undertake, I guess, to authentically portray the setting. So you were familiar with the town. Did you dig deeper into the history of the town or that period?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I did. There's several books available about the town, which is Sofala. But I went up there when I was in the early stages, and I spent a week in the area, just driving around,
Yeah.
walking along the river,
What's
spending
the town
time.
like today, can I ask?
It's pretty run down.
Okay.
Uh, it's it has no economy other than people coming to see tourism, and it's
Right.
a long way from anywhere.
Okay.
And yeah, but it still has a lot of the original buildings from the gold rush. What is really interesting is that the accounts of the river
Mm.
from
In,
1914
mm.
describe it as being a putrid, rank stream of where which the inhabitants used as a dump,
Yes.
and and without and environmental awareness is a fairly contemporary thing. You can see that the use of the land back then was far more important than the idea of the landscape, if you know what I
Yes.
mean. And so
Hmm.
that was really interesting. I spent a lot of time at the Bathurst District Historical Society in Bathurst at their museum, which is wonderful, and in their archives, and they were tremendously uh, warm and generous with their time and information. And that was Bathurst is a lovely town, and
Yeah.
it was really, really interesting to get in there and talk to these people that had such deep generational connections
Right.
with the town and with Sofala and places like that. So
Mm.
for me, it you know, if I can go there and talk to people who've lived there for a while, it comes alive.
Yeah. Oh, it definitely adds to the authenticity. You read it through the pages,
Mm.
like yeah. It's very vivid.
Yeah,
Um, and you touched on, like toxic, I guess, masculinity that still exists today. Um, was that hard for you to sort of it's such a big theme, these social issues that you portray, like gender inequality and poverty and abuse and things. Um,
yeah.
they can be delicate issues to portray in a novel. How did you get the balance right? Because you still want to entertain with the book. You don't want to make it sort of too heavy, but so I think it's a bit tricky. Is that something that you had to work hard on to make sure you were striking a good balance between, exploring these heavy themes that are very important, but also
Yeah.
entertaining? You've got a great mystery going through. So how did you?
Yeah, look, I was always conscious that I do not want to lecture the reader, and I
Mm,
do not want to swamp them with great slabs of historical information. I want to be as a camera and say, this is what existed.
yeah,
And we had traveling prostitutes, and we had, um, a polluted river, and we had
yeah,
this, and we had that. And make no judgment because this is
yeah.
how it was. And
Mm,
it's very hard for us now in um, reasonably affluent country to realize that it wasn't long ago that we really did live in very difficult conditions.
yes.
But yeah, I didn't want to labor the point. I thought just by bringing these characters and situations out of the shadows, the reader will see. The
Mm,
reader will see and pick it up, and I leave that work for the reader to do.
yeah. No, it was great. You hinted at like sort of intolerance, to,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
and so much, but it wasn't. It was, yeah, you're right. It was subtle. It wasn't hammered into the reader. It was a very
Yeah,
entertaining book still. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, and so the title, Skull River, did you think of that? Or did that come as you were writing or after you finished? It's very evocative. And
Yeah, that was
yeah,
my that was both titles that come from me.
yeah,
I
yeah.
Bonelands refers to the bones that was left in the environment after the Federation drought,
Mm-hmm.
and Skull River refers to sort of hallucination or that Hawkins has when he's approaching
Yes.
the river.
Yeah.
And it had a nice sort of tie-in with the first book,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
speaking about
Skull Bones.
bodies and land and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And of course, marketing loved it. Like
That's
that.
great. Yes. And there's no convincing required. That's great. It makes your life easy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. How long did it take you to write both Bonelands and Skull River? And I'd love to know, did you find it easier or harder to write about Gus Hawkins the second time around?
Look, at the first time it took roughly 2 years. And when I
Okay.
say 2 years, I mean I worked on it, you know, every day.
Consistently? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
And did when I wasn't doing that, I was reading and researching.
Right.
And, it was lockdown.
Yeah.
And it was like, I tried learning German. I just thought this is just no bad reading. Why don't I just write a novel? So I did that instead. Then when and that got picked up pretty quickly. I started straight away on another one, thinking, oh, they'll want another one,
Yes.
and they did. And then we agreed on a hand up date, and I suddenly found myself working to a deadline, and
Okay. Yeah.
that made it really difficult. Um, uh, Very much difficult because I just didn't know if I could do it. I didn't
Right.
know if I could bring it off, and I just was working in complete isolation. I wasn't bouncing off other people or
Was that
running
by
stuff.
choice for you? You didn't want to bounce, or you?
Well, not circumstance and
Yep.
choice.
Yep.
Sometimes it's not the right thing to do to show work in development to an external reader. You've got to
Mm.
really trust them. And I mean, the first person to read one of the earlier drafts was my publisher at a firm, and I really trust her judgment, so I was happy to give it to her.
Excellent.
She just said a couple of things, and I just went, "Oh, yeah, that's right," and I just
Yeah.
zoomed on from there.
Mm.
And I had a great editorial team. They're a great publisher to work with. Um, yeah, and then now I've signed. So it was tough. I mean, every book is tough. It
Yes.
is, it is a slog, and it is infuriating, and it's addictive, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
once you,
You're in.
yeah,
Um, and I suppose, yeah, so the first time round you didn't have like a time bomb going. You didn't have a deadline to
no,
work to. So it was very different circumstances too, I suppose. Whereas the
yeah,
second time
but
round, yeah.
I had my own goal. I had a goal that I really wanted to get that manuscript as good as I could get it,
Yeah.
even if it didn't get published. I wanted to improve my craft skills. I
Mm-hmm.
really wanted to master it. So by setting that intrinsic goal within myself, in a way, I was protecting myself from not getting published.
Yes.
Um, so if I met those KPIs, I would be happy.
Yeah.
But I met them and was picked up and published. So that
Yeah.
was just blew me away. And it's gone on to do extremely well. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool.
Excellent. Yes.
And I've just had,
That urge.
well, I've had really interesting emails from so many people who have shared their memories of life out in the bush
Mm.
or on a sheep farm or a relative in the Boer War or something like that. that it's quite a privileged position to be in, to be able to connect with so many people and
Yes,
who feel strongly enough that they want to tell me.
and get in
So
touch.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
Congratulations. I think it's hard, yes, to resonate with a small audience, let alone like such a wide
yeah.
audience and different walks of
Mm,
life. That's got universal
mm,
appeal. That's very hard. Um,
mm.
can you walk us through, I guess, do you have a typical writing routine? Do you have any sort of rituals or habits that help you get into writing mode and writing mindset?
I really like to start first thing in the morning, like have my breakfast, walk the dog, come
Okay.
home, make a really super strong coffee, and sit down and read what I've written the day before, and then just go for it.
Yeah.
And I like to work for at least 2 hours, then have half-hour break, go back and do another 2 hours, and then um, spend some time reading or going for
Mm,
walks is really good. That's really important because you step away from the screen or from the keyboard, but the brain is still, the wheels
yeah.
are still spinning. So going for a long walk really solves a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Plot
Clears
problems
your
of my
head, doesn't it?
mind. Yeah,
Mm,
yeah, and I solve things like that, and then I might come back and jot those things down, and then I stop after at dinner. I stop because I cannot sleep if I'm thinking
your
about.
mind's still going. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It must be hard to switch off though. I think I do some of my best thinking as I'm falling asleep. I think
yeah,
no distractions around. So yeah, I would imagine as a writer it could be very hard to switch that off. I think sometimes
yeah,
it's going off in your subconscious, right, as well, which is a little harder,
yeah,
yeah, to switch
yeah.
off.
I really, I just if something's really bugging me, I will sit up, turn the light on, and write it down, and then I'll
Yeah,
let it go. It's on the paper. I can forget about it, and go to sleep.
yeah. And I have to ask, how did you shift? So you started off in art. How
Yeah.
did you shift from art to writing? Were you always passionate about writing and you kind of just didn't do anything about it? Or was it something that you were always kind of working on in the background whilst you were doing art? Or how did
Oh,
it
look,
all
I
happen?
was very fortunate to grow up in a house of bookworms. My parents
Okay.
and my sister, we just read books. That's what we did. We were given books for Christmas, for birthdays. We were taken to the libraries on weekends, and having a book on the go, it's just been a part of my life. I've just been a big, big, big reader,
Mm,
and it's just been normal to me. And yet I wanted to go to art school too, so I never thought of being a writer.
okay.
Never. I wanted to paint or I wanted to make ceramics, so I went to
Mm,
art school and I learned a lot about the creative process and about the tension of wanting to make something and it's not working, and the sort of persistence that's needed and the flexibility that's needed to go to let go of the idea you started with and go with where the artwork is taking you. And you really need that skill when you're writing a book because, as you say, a lot of it is subconscious. Stuff
mm,
comes out, and you think, right, okay, well, that's I've got to let go of my preconceptions and go that way. Anyway,
right.
so I did I did a lot of printmaking, and I was really hampered by the fact that making art is a very capital intensive um, thing to do. You need money. You need
Mm,
big money to buy the materials. And when you have children, all of a
yes.
sudden you can't spend the money on canvas and paints and the rest of it. And so it was like, oh, like surveys have been done on visual artists.
Yeah.
And invariably, women stop in their mid-30s because that is when their
Right. The
family.
babies and yeah,
Yeah,
makes
yeah,
sense.
and you just cannot get into your creative stride and then stop
Mm,
and go. it just doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
So I just thought, I tried various things, but I thought, oh, this isn't enough, and I thought I'm going to try writing and see if I enjoy that. Because
Okay.
all I need is
You
pen
knew
and
you
paper.
loved reading. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I did. I gave it a try, and I really enjoyed it. I found it was like playing in a sandpit. I got this character to say that, and that one to say that. And it was, just having a ball. So I went on and started writing, and 2 years later, I got a contract.
Were you
And
scared? So you hadn't done sort of any writing previously. So how did you pluck up the courage to share it with the world? Are you just quite thick-skinned and
no,
quite no?
no, no,
I would
no,
imagine,
not
yeah, without any writing experience, and then you've just written for the first time, and then you're sharing it. That's very brave.
Well, what I did was, back then there was a manuscript development program run by Hachette, the
Ah,
big
okay.
multinational, and
Yeah.
they put out an ad. They want writers from all around Australia to send in their fiction
Hmm.
manuscript. I sent it in there, and they
Okay.
picked 8 of us, and I was one of them.
Amazing.
And they flew us up to an island in Queensland for 5 days, and they had agents and publishers, and we talked about our work, and we worked on a manuscripts, and
Mm.
two of us were published from that. I mean, that wouldn't happen these days. There's not the money for that. But um yeah, so I didn't have to go out and submit, hawk my wares. It was
Yes.
picked up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's excellent. I guess it just was meant to be. Um, and do you think that your art background helps your writing? So you've kind of in touch with your creativity, I suppose, and you know how to tap into that. Has art sort of helped, do you think?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it has. I when I really want to get to know a period, I do go looking at the paintings and
Mm,
sculptures of the time,
yeah.
and the artists who made them, and what sort of atmosphere was happening at the time, and that's sort of my way in.
Mm,
Um, is that sort of visual stuff, and then from there I go into novels that were written then, or
yep.
novels about then, or you know uh, non-fiction accounts of life then.
Yep.
um, but the visual side of it is very important for me,
Absolutely.
because you can pick up a lot from a painting about what was going on in that cultural society at the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you still creating art at all?
No, no.
No.
I'd like to, but you know, I don't want to do two things badly. I just want to do one thing, do it well. But time may come where I say, yeah, no, I've done enough writing. I want to go back
The art.
to,
Yeah.
yeah,
Super interesting.
yeah.
So outside of writing and art, I think you mentioned you like to walk. Are there any sort of other activities or hobbies that you pursue that might inspire your writing?
Um, Yeah, being out in nature, being in the wilderness. I love going to art galleries.
Yeah.
I love films and museums. I adore museums. Really find them. That's like the home of my soul is a
Mm,
museum. I don't care if it's one room out the back of Silverton or a big one in the city. I love looking at old things,
yeah.
and reading. Big
Yeah.
reader.
Mm.
Um,
Um, I'd love to know
yeah.
who are some of your favorite authors. Just before I forget, I read when you were talking about, when a woman sort of has children and she's an artist, like kind of loses that urge, and I guess they're tired, and the kids take up so much of your persona and everything. There's a shift. I read a really fantastic book called Art Hour at the Duchess Hotel that kind of explores that. Um,
Yeah.
that's a really good one. But yeah, sorry. But and yeah,
Yeah,
what
look,
what
I
authors?
think it's such an important thing for
Mm,
creative women, that having a baby and raising them is just so absorbing,
it
and
is, yeah.
it just takes everything out of you.
Mm.
And for me, I just gave myself over to
Yeah.
that bonding and that obsession, and then slowly you move away from them, and you start to bring things back into your life. And
Yeah.
the door shuts, but it doesn't shut forever.
Mm.
You
Yeah.
certainly feel a bit panicky at first.
Yeah.
But
It is.
yeah. Sorry, what did you ask
Oh, sorry. I
me?
was asking. Yeah, sorry. I interrupted with that art out. Just it reminded me a lot of what you were talking about because yeah, she was
Yeah.
amazing. But
Oh, my favorite
what you like
writers.
to read? Yeah. Any favorite authors or any books that you sort of feel have left a lasting impact, I would say.
Um, yeah, I have a lot of favorite books. I might just love a particular book but not the entire author's work. So I sort of, I love Richard Flanagan's Narrow Road to the Deep North,
Mm-hmm.
Hilary Mantel's Wolf Hall trilogy, and I listened to a podcast with her talking about writing historical fiction and
Okay.
how important it was for her to visualize the scene
Yeah.
before she wrote it, to
Mm.
imagine which way the light was coming in the window, to imagine the stuff of the prayer book, and the dust motes in the sun. And that was hugely important because I like visual detail in a book,
Yeah.
and I like to put it in. And I was really thrilled to hear her say how much she loved it, because she is truly a genius.
Mm.
um who else do I love? Oh God, mental blank.
No, that's yeah, I've put you on the spot. Um, and so you said your family loves reading. Have
Yeah.
they read, obviously they've read your books now. Do they
Yeah.
give you constructive feedback ever, or is it always they love the books and
Well, yeah, I think my father was a bit taken aback at first, and I gave him the manuscript of Bonelands before it went to press, and I said, I really want to know what you think of it. And he read it and he said, "All of that came out of your head." Yes, Dad. And I was very keen to get his take on it, because
Yeah.
he was born in 1931,
Yeah.
and he can almost reach back and touch that era, because he would
Mm,
have had access to his family memories. And
yes.
I'd say, "Well, Dad, what was really important back then?" And he
Yeah.
said, "Class. Class and religion were the
Mm,
two super important things of Australian society that have changed a lot."
massively,
And so
yes.
it was important for me to get his sort of, get the nod from him, and I
Insight.
did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an amazing resource to tap into. To
Yeah. Yeah.
1931
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've done sort of women's fiction and you've done some crime history. Do you
Yeah.
think that's your genre now? Do you think there's any other genres that you may explore in future? Anything that's kind of piquing your interest a little bit?
Look, I would really love to have a crack at creative nonfiction.
Okay.
Yeah. But I just can't settle on a subject or topic or something that I want. But think, I just think it'd be really interesting to do.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah. But
I've
for
not done
now,
that.
I've
Yeah.
just signed a contract for two more historical
Oh, two
fiction.
more. Okay.
So,
And are these Gus Hawkins inspired books? So is Gus Hawkins going
uh,
to be?
one more in Gus, and then the second one, haven't quite decided on that. It will either be another one set in the Edwardian era, or Broken Hill in the 1970s.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
It's amazing. Is it hard for you to come up with these settings, or do you think you're pretty you're so well researched now that you kind of have ideas that where to go next?
Yeah, look, you know, most writers have a lot of words and scenes and half finished manuscripts that never see the light of day. They just sort of sit in your hard drive or your bottom drawer or whatever. And I do go back and plunder them. And I go back and I think, what was I writing about, and what was so
Mm,
interesting, and does it still interest me? And um, is there anything there that I'd like to know more about? Because people say, write what you know. I like to write what I don't know.
mm,
So I explore something and it becomes a journey for me, a journey of exploration.
yes.
Um,
I
so
think it's
yeah,
probably more interesting as well for you to, or definitely for me, I would rather be learning as I'm
yeah,
right and growing and yeah, exploring.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think if you kind of
yeah,
stick to what you're good at, life would easy, but also a little bit
yeah.
boring as well.
Bit
So
dull.
yeah.
Yeah. I've learnt an awful lot as a writer, and I think it's a really exciting thing to be, because it gives you permission to dig around in places that you normally wouldn't. I mean, my search history is pretty weird.
Yeah. Can only imagine. Yeah,
Yeah.
it'd be very interesting.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think you don't have to be a specialist. You've got to be a generalist, and you're just constantly picking up snippets of conversation or images that take your fancy, or a few lines from a poem. You're just sort of gathering them all in like a bowerbird,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And I used to teach art. Would you ever consider teaching writing?
Um, I have given writing workshops
Okay.
um, along the way. Um, Teaching any sort of creative work is great if the people really want to learn it. If they're open to it,
Mm,
then it's such an exciting um,
and
space
rewarding.
to be in. Yeah, super rewarding.
Mm,
Um, I wouldn't say no, but um, there's just no easy answers to actually sitting down and doing it.
right. Yeah.
And
It can
just
be,
working through the pain, pushing the doubt
yes.
away, and just getting the words down.
Yeah. I think it's tricky as well with these creative things like writing and art. It can be quite subjective. So what
Oh
one
yeah,
person may not like, may be adored by other people. So I think, yeah, it's
yeah,
definitely a tricky thing to teach. Um,
yeah,
so yeah, so you've got two books in the works, and
yeah.
any other things on your horizon? You're going to be very busy writing, I suppose.
Yeah, very busy writing. Busy with this new dog. Just sort of shot myself in the foot with that, because I don't get as much time as I need. She's asleep on the floor over there. But I'm slowly clawing some time back.
Yeah,
Um, Reading and writing and walking, uh, it's just what I do every day.
yeah.
And yeah,
I would say big
um,
congratulations on like publishing some amazing works, but also for
thank you.
finding what you're passionate about and doing it and being successful at it. Because I think that can be very hard for a lot of people. So I think you're one
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
fortunate people who is able to do what they love. And I think the people who find their passion and are good at it, yeah, they can produce amazing things like this. So yeah.
Yes, thank you. But I have to say, when I went to art school,
Mm.
my father said to me, "Don't do it. You won't ever have any money." And I said, "Oh, you don't understand. I have to do this." And blow me down, he was right. You
Yeah.
you can follow your passion, but you can't have it all.
No.
If you're going to
Yeah.
do it, um, you've
There
got
must
to.
be some sacrifices.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm.
and that's really hard in a world where everything's so expensive. I don't, it's just hard to live and be a creative person at the same time.
Mm,
But I've met a lot of people in their 40s and 50s who've said, right, I did the career, I did all of that, and now it's my time, and I'm going to make sculpture, or I'm going to write poetry, or I'm going to do whatever.
yeah,
And I totally agree. We only get one life, so you know,
yes.
follow
Yeah.
follow that urge.
Absolutely. Because they don't go away. Those urges will not go away. So I think life is
Thank
short.
you.
And if you
Yeah,
can follow your heart with whatever pursuit that is,
yeah,
yeah, go for
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, look, Pip, I will let you go. Thank you so much for your time, your amazing insights, and for being so honest with us today. I think it was really fascinating to hear about all the research that you did, your writing process, and how you sort of got into Gus Hawkins's world, and brought it so vividly to life. I think Skull River
Mm.
was like a compelling mystery, but also a really sort of profound exploration of, so many themes, and a very interesting period in Australia. So, yeah, something I hadn't read too much about, and I'm very keen to delve into Bonelands. And I can't wait to see what you have in store next. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been really nice to chat. Really nice. And hello to everyone.
Yes, and thank you to everybody watching. And we will see you next month. Take care, everybody, and thanks again, Pip. Bye bye,
Okay,
everybody.
thank you. Bye bye.